In a twist of fate, Mark found himself at the center of an extraordinary connection when a seemingly wild baby bat attached itself to him. Undeterred by the unusual bond, Mark embraced his newfound companion, feeding it insects and caring for it like a cherished pet. However, a year into this peculiar relationship, Mark was left utterly stunned when he made a shocking discovery about his companion. So before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. After a week of having his bat companion at home, Mark could barely imagine his life without the creature that he had named Arya. But there was still so much Mark did not know about the animal. His worries first started when Arya seemed to have less energy by the day. In the beginning, she was constantly active at night, never sitting still by the looks of things. She was even on occasion flying during the day, but Arya was not doing that anymore these past couple of days. He wanted to bring her to vet and had the poor animal checked out. Mark called them all, but most of them told him that they were not too keen on taking a risk with his animal. And the ones who were willing needed Mark to sign a form that they were not responsible for anything bad happening. So this did not exactly fill Mark with confidence, and thus he needed to consider alternative options. After a while, Mark finally came across a so-called bat sanctuary, which was located a couple of cities away. It would be a drive of about 5 hours, and Mark did not even know if that was possible with a bat. But he decided that calling the sanctuary was the least he could do. So as Mark described his situation to the expert on the other side of the line, the first thing he was informed about was that it was not good for a bat to be kept as a pet is all. They would have trouble getting the necessary movement space and nutrients in a standard house. The bat sanctuary was willing to have a look at Arya and also told Mark that it was not going to put the nail in the cothostridum for the animal. They did not even want to charge him any money for the procedure. But they have one condition. After they had nursed Arya back to health, she would not go back home with Mark and stay at the sanctuary until she was ready to be released again. The thought of having to give it away broke his heart. He was also a rational person and knew that he did not really have a choice. He would start to prepare for the journey right away. He prepared the back of his car by making it as dark as possible and giving Arya space to hang from. He also brought enough food and water for her. Mark had found Arya by complete coincidence one day. He was hiking in the nearby forest when he suddenly heard some strange sounds coming from the bushes. He speculated that it could be an animal, but none that he was able to recognize. But when he pushed away some of the leaves, something suddenly jumped out of the bushes right at him. It was a rather large-looking bat that had jumped out of the vegetation and was now clinging onto his arm with all its strength. He had no idea what this bat was doing here and why it was active during the day. He did not know much about bats, but he was pretty sure that they were supposed to be nocturnal. He shook his arm a couple of times to try and get the bed off, but it was no use. He eventually concluded that this animal might need help and took it home. Unlike the wild, skittish bats he had read about, Arya seemed remarkably comfortable in his home. She fluttered around with an air of curiosity, exploring corners and perches with an unexpected grace. At night, her activity peaked, showcasing her natural nocturnal instincts. Determined to provide the best care for Arya, Mark dove into the depths of the internet, scouring forums and articles about bat care. He learned about their diet, habitat needs, and behavioral patterns. As the days passed, Mark noticed an unspoken bond forming between him and Arya. He was touched by the subtle ways she communicated, a flick of her wings, a tilt of her head. Their silent interactions were profound, creating a unique companionship. Initially, Mark dismissed the minor changes in Arya's behavior as her adapting to a new environment. Mark noticed her increased lethargy, a stark contrast to her earlier vivacity. Mark meticulously prepared for the journey to the bat sanctuary. His silent, long stretches of road gave Mark too much time to worry about her declining health. Upon arrival at the sanctuary, Mark was greeted with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Sanctuary employees bombarded Mark with questions. They inquired about Arya's origin, her diet, and how he had been caring for her. Handing Arya over to the sanctuary staff, Mark felt a surge of mixed emotions. There was relief that she was finally getting professional care, but also a gnawing anxiety about the outcome. While waiting in the sanctuary's lobby, Mark overheard a conversation that piqued his concern. A doctor and an employee discussed Arya's condition in hushed tones, their words laced with surprise and urgency. Phrases like "never seen anything like it" and "quite unusual" floated to Mark's ears. This accidental eavesdropping deepened his worry. Mark approached the sanctuary staff for answers. His questions, however, were met with evasive and vague responses. Mark's persistent questions and visible anxiety made the sanctuary staff uncomfortable. They politely yet firmly asked him to leave. Mark sensed an unspoken tension in the air as he was escorted to the exit. Mark couldn't shake off his concerns about Arya. As evening approached, slipping in unnoticed, hiding in the shadows, Mark witnessed an unexpected scene. A group of individuals in formal attire, including a scientist, arrived in haste. They spoke briefly with the sanctuary staff before swiftly taking Arya. Mark's heart raced as he followed the vehicle carrying Arya. The car finally stopped at a secluded research facility, its modern facade hiding the secrets within. So as Mark parked his car a discreet distance away, he took in the high-security gates and surveillance cameras. This place was more than just a lab. It was a fortress of science shrouded in mystery. Mark approached the lab but was immediately met with resistance. The security was tight, and his requests to enter were firmly denied. He tried reasoning, explaining his connection to Arya, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. Mark knew he needed to find another way to gain access, to understand what was happening with Arya inside those walls. Undeterred, Mark persisted. He made phone calls, sent emails, and even tried reaching out through social media. His efforts finally paid off when a sympathetic lab employee agreed to arrange a brief meeting with a representative. Relief washed over Mark, mixed with anxiety. This meeting was his chance to get answers, to understand the mystery surrounding Arya's sudden departure from the sanctuary. In the sterile meeting room of the lab, Mark faced a panel of experts. Their explanations about Arya and the lab's interest in her were peppered with technical terms and vague references. Mark sensed they were withholding information, giving him only fragments of the truth. After the meeting, Mark sat in his car, replaying the conversation in his mind. He sifted through their words, searching for hidden meanings and clues. The fragmented information painted a confusing picture, but Mark was sure of one thing: the lab was deeply invested in Arya for reasons they weren't disclosing. He couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was at stake. Arya was not just a bat, she was a key to something much larger, something the lab was desperately trying to keep hidden. Mark knew he couldn't let it go. He owed it to Arya to find out why she was so important. As Mark drove away from the lab, his mind raced with thoughts and theories. He knew the lab held the answers he desperately sought, and he couldn't give up now. Mark was determined to unravel the mystery, no matter how deep he had to dig. After days of relentless effort, Mark's determination finally paid off. He secured a meeting with a senior lab researcher, someone with the authority and knowledge he sought. Well, Mark entered the lab once again, this time with a sense of purpose. He was not just a concerned pet owner anymore. He was a man on a mission, ready to break through the barriers of secrecy surrounding Arya's condition. In a small, stark room, Mark faced the senior researcher. The researcher, with a tone of reluctant admittance, began to share startling details about Arya's species. It was revealed that she belonged to a rare and little-known species, her characteristics baffling even to experienced scientists. Arya's presence in the area was an anomaly, a fact that had piqued the lab's interest. Mark listened intently, absorbing the gravity of the revelation, his mind racing with the implications of what he was hearing. The researcher delved into Arya's origin, explaining the rarity and significance of her species. Though specifics about her native habitat were omitted, it was clear that Arya was far from her natural environment. This information shed light on why her behavior and biology had seemed so puzzling. Mark's understanding of Arya deepened as he realized she was more than just an unusual companion. She was a living enigma. The lab emphasized Arya's remarkable survival and adaptation in an environment far removed from her natural habitat. Mark felt a new level of respect and awe for his winged companion. Mark left the meeting feeling overwhelmed by the enormity of Arya's situation. The revelation of her uniqueness and her importance in the realm of wildlife conservation weighed heavily on him. Mark found himself immersed in his study, surrounded by a sea of books and stacks of research notes dedicated to bats. As he delved deeper into Arya's story, she wasn't merely a bat he had grown attached to. She embodied a critical role in the intricate web of wildlife conservation, emphasizing nature's intricate design and the interconnectedness of all living beings. Over time, Mark gradually came to terms with the undeniable truth. He realized that as much as he cherished her presence, he owed it to Arya and the ecosystem to set her free. Mark devoted hours to preparing himself mentally for the inevitable farewell. He knew that the day would arrive when he'd have to bid Arya goodbye, and weighed heavily on his heart. Nevertheless, he understood that it was a necessary step, a sacrifice he had to make for her well-being and the greater good of the environment. As the approaching departure date cast its shadow over Mark, his emotions ran a tumultuous course. Sadness engulfed him at the thought of parting ways with Arya, the little creature who had brought so much joy into his life. Yet beneath the sorrow, he felt a profound sense of pride, knowing that he had played a role in preparing her for a life where she would fulfill a far-reaching purpose within the intricate tapestry of nature. Mark's heart ached as he approached Arya's enclosure for one last visit. Their connection was undeniable, built on countless shared moments. He watched her hanging gracefully, her wings glistening in the soft light. Their bond was a testament to the beauty of the wild. Arya sensed Mark's presence and chirped softly as if understanding the inevitable farewell. Mark reached out, gently stroking her fur, whispering words of gratitude for their time together. He knew this was for the best for her and her species. Tears welled up in Mark's eyes as he reminisced about their adventures together. From their first meeting to the countless nights under the stars, they had forged an unbreakable connection. Mark cherished every memory, knowing they would sustain him during her absence. Arya nuzzled Mark's hand, a gesture of affection and understanding. It was as if she too recognized the significance of her return to the wild. Mark took a deep breath, resolving to support her in this final, selfless act of love. As Mark left Arya's enclosure, he couldn't help but smile through his tears. Their farewell was bittersweet, but he knew he had made the right choice. Arya deserved to be free, and Mark would always treasure the profound bond they shared. In the days that followed, Mark worked tirelessly alongside the researchers, preparing Arya for her journey. He admired their dedication to conservation and the welfare of all creatures. Together they ensured that Arya would have the best chance of thriving in her natural habitat. On the eve of Arya's release, Mark stood at the edge of the forest, a mix of emotions swirling within him. He watched as Arya took flight, disappearing into the night. The wind carried her away, but the memories of their time together would forever remain etched in his heart. Mark continued to support conservation efforts, inspired by his time with Arya. He knew that their bond had not only enriched his life, but also contributed to the preservation of a rare and precious species. Years later, Mark received news that a colony of Arya's species had successfully established itself in its natural habitat. He couldn't help but smile, knowing that Arya's journey had come full circle and her legacy would live on for generations to come. As Mark looked up at the starry sky one night, he felt a sense of peace. Arya's spirit seemed to dance among the stars, a reminder of the enduring connection between humans and the wild, and the importance of protecting the wonders of the natural world.